Chicago Tonight, Black Voices is made possible in part by Fifth Third Bank and by the support of these donors.
At Fifth Third, we believe when diverse voices are heard and empowered, communities are made stronger, lives are made better, and the future holds greater promise for all. That's why we're proud to support Chicago Tonight Black Voices. Together, we can make a difference. Together, we can drive change.
Good evening and welcome to Chicago Tonight, Black Voices. I'm Brandis Friedman and thank you for sharing part of your weekend with us. On our 50th show tonight, the 2020 census data reveals the black population is declining in Chicago. What the city can do to convince black residents to keep calling Chicago their sweet home. Legendary civil rights leader Rev Jesse Jackson turned 80 this week. A look back at his work and legacy. From defendant to defender, Chicagoan Jared Adams shares his story on being wrongfully convicted as a teenager.
Seeing Tim Anderson, this color.
And Chicago artist Edo brings his exuberant style to a portrait of a White Sox fan favorite. First off tonight, from its founding as a trading post by a Haitian man to the Great Migration to today, Chicago owes much to its black residents. The culture that makes residents so proud, art, cuisine, music, industry, is impossible to imagine without the contributions of Black Chicago. But since the 1980s, the city that helped shape the country's first black president has seen a steady stream of its black residents flee. According to the 2020 census, Chicago's black population fell nearly 10% over the last decade. That's a loss of 85,000 black Chicagoans, and that is leaving some communities hollowed out and a mayoral administration searching for ways to convince them to stay. Joining us now with more are Stacy Sutton, assistant professor of urban planning and policy at the University of Illinois Chicago, and Kendra Jackson Freeman, vice president at the Metropolitan Planning Council. Welcome, both of you, to Chicago Tonight Black Voices, and thanks for joining us. Kendra Jackson Freeman, let's start with you, please. Beyond their race, what do we know about the people who are choosing to leave and why they choose to leave?
Yeah, so we do know that there's been some trending down in the black population, and we still don't have the full 2020 census data yet, so that data isn't perfect, but MPC recently did a study looking at who's leaving Cook County, and one of the things that we found is there's an impact particularly to low and moderate income black households. But it's not just about people leaving, it's really about the net loss, that we're losing people, but we're not attracting those people back. And that's, I think, part of the bigger problem here.
And Stacy Sutton, on that same subject, in your work, you've found out that there are some more nuanced reasons that people might leave. Parking tickets, which we know has been a big story in Chicago the last couple of years, for example. Tell us about what you've learned about why people are choosing to leave.
Well, I can't say that there's a direct causation, right? But I can say a couple of things, though. So when you introduced me, you said I was assistant professor. I'm actually associate professor. The reason I make that correction is because when I receive a ticket, and I have received tickets, I'm able to pay, right? I have upward mobility in terms of work. Whereas what Chicago has to offer, especially low income, working class folks, is just not that much. And so when you receive a ticket, right, even if you went through the red light or you were speeding, you received a ticket for $100, it's extremely difficult to pay. And then it gets worse because of the doubling of that fine and the fees and so forth. So, one of the things we argue is that leaving Chicago has a lot to do with the economic burden of tickets, but just also the lack of jobs and opportunities.
Okay. And back to you, Kendra Jackson Freeman. Some neighborhoods have been especially impacted by black population loss, Inglewood and Austin in particular. With fewer residents, what does that mean for the future of the communities left behind?
Well, I think it's challenging. I think we have to look at the bigger question is, we haven't made some places in Chicago a place that's supportive of of low and moderate income families. I think exactly what Stacey was alluding to. When you look at neighborhoods, particularly on the south and west sides, where there's been decades and decades of sustained disinvestment, on top of school closings, on top of, we know a lot of those neighborhoods were hardest hit by the pandemic and violence. That compiled, it makes it very difficult for families to thrive. So we really need to think about how do we shift that, and how do we think about doing targeted investments to really invest in Black neighborhoods like we should have been doing for many, 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 many years. And that has a lot to do with our legacy of segregation and inequity in the city of Chicago, and decisions that we made, quite honestly, dating back to when the Great Migration happened, of how we chose to receive our growing Black population, and how we confine them to very small spaces in the city, and how we built structures of inequity that still impact, generations later.
And Stacey Sutton, are there models in other cities for steps that Chicago could possibly take to help address some of this population loss?
Again, the question of will it address population loss? Most likely, but it's not certain, in the sense that there are models of community wealth building. I think what Kendra just mentioned is spot on, in the sense that a lot of our neighborhoods do not have the array of amenities that neighborhoods on the north side have, right? And one of those happened to be, the kind of, let's say, our commercial corridors, but the vibrancy of small businesses. There's some, but there could be a lot more. Part of the challenge with opening a business, of which there are many, I'm not going to go into those, but if we really put an emphasis on community wealth and collective ownership of enterprises, which many cities are doing, and which Chicago has hinted at. But if we actually invested in those programs, there would be more opportunities for more people to own both the enterprises in their neighborhood, right? And that also creates jobs for people in the neighborhood. So it's a very different thinking than supporting an individual entrepreneur to get uber wealthy, but rather supporting collectives of people to start enterprises to address community needs. And that creates more collective wealth across the community rather than one individual.
Kendra Jackson-Freeman, how important are affordable housing, but also equity in financing in keeping Black Chicagoans in the city?
Oh, I think it's critical, and I think we have a history, I think, in Chicago of trying to spread the peanut butter too thin, which I think is what Stacey was talking about. We want to give everybody a little piece of something, and that doesn't work when you're trying to transform neighborhoods. You have to think about, what does comprehensive investment look like? And that looks like housing that builds wealth and builds opportunities for middle and low income families, whether that's affordable housing, whether that's housing that allows families to move into neighborhoods like Bronzeville, where the prices are at the door, but also coupling that with infrastructure investments and coupling that with capital investments to bring amenities, to bring anchors, to fund small local businesses so that they have the support and the structure that they need to survive in their own neighborhoods, and complementing that with transit access and things like lead service line replacement and flooding prevention, so that people who are making investments and buying homes, are seeing the longevity of their investment and gaining equity in those neighborhoods. But there's also a bigger piece, I think, that's important about narrative change, about Black spaces, that we really need to tackle.
Go on. We've got just a few seconds, but I do want to hear your point on this really quickly.
We need to change the negative narrative about Black neighborhoods. When you turn on the news and when you hear things about Black neighborhoods, it's people are getting shot, something closing down, the liquor store here, the school closing. That is not the narrative in the entirety of Black neighborhoods. They are strong, vibrant places. People make decisions to live there. I grew up in Chicago. I made a decision to move to Chatham. And when at the time it wasn't maybe not the best economically best decision for me to make, if I was thinking solely about how do I make a profit on my investment later. but I believed in that neighborhood and I loved that neighborhood. And it was about, I don't want to have to go to another neighborhood to get those amenities. They should be here. And how do I become a part of fighting for that in my neighborhood?
And that's the perfect place where we'll have to leave it. My thanks to both of our guests, Kendra Jackson-Freeman and Stacey Sutton, for joining us.
Thank you.
One of Chicago's most notable residents and one of the country's most visible and iconic civil rights leaders for the last 60 years turned 80 this week. Rev Jesse Jackson joined us this week on Chicago Tonight to talk about his work and his legacy. Jackson had some pointed comments about a code of silence in some communities that can hurt homicide investigations.
I said on the racial dimension of this thing, black kills a white is jail time. White kills a black is riot time. Blacks kill blacks and browns kill browns is miller time. We relaxed the sentence for our lives. And that must not be the case. That must not be the case. It is the case. It must. I said, if you was a friend that had gone in the car or gone in the locker, what would you do? They said, well, nothing. They snitch. So, well, if a white kid had a rope in the car or something like that, what would you? But tell it. More people die from the gun than die from dope, rope. So I'm trying to say that we must engage students in a meaningful way and pursue these killers. They know who they are.
Reverend Jesse Jackson there, still advocating for justice and an end to violence as he turns 80. You can watch more of Chicago Tonight's interview with Reverend Jackson on our website. Up next, the latest selection in our Black Voices book club, so don't go anywhere. At 17 years old, Jared Adams, a black boy from the south side of Chicago, was convicted of raping a college freshman, a white woman, at a university in Wisconsin. Adams would spend 10 years of his young life in prison for a rape he always maintained he did not commit. He spent those years studying the legal system to overturn his own case and then eventually becoming a lawyer himself, working to help young black men like himself. He wrote about his experiences in this week's Black Voices Book Club selection. The book is called Redeeming Justice, From Defendant to Defender, My Fight for Equity on Both Sides of a Broken System. And author, attorney, Jared Adams joins us now. Jared, welcome to Chicago Tonight, Black Voices.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be on, and I was enjoying the conversation previously before I was on. Very interesting.
Glad you like it, Jared. Thank you. You and I have spoken about your story a number of times before and your work, but let's kind of start a little bit ago. You and your friends, three, young black men, teenagers, you all were accused of raping a white woman. What role do you think race played at the time?
It played the entire role is what it played, because the accusation itself was so outlandish. Brandis, me, my co-defendants, my friends who were accused, our families, we didn't think that we would be found guilty because we were telling the truth. And little did we know that the truth does not get people who look like you and I victory in a court of law.
You write that you were always taught, that you always believed, tell the truth, be honest, and the system will, it won't wrongfully convict you, which is of course what ended up happening. How did you use your time in prison?
I used my time with what got me here today. I did a lot of reading. I did a lot of soul searching. My aunt Josephine, I speak about her in the book, Redeeming Justice. She would send me the Chicago Tribune and the Chicago Sun-Times. And I remember speaking with her one day and I said, Auntie, listen, you're spending so much for these subscriptions. You get here so late. Why are you sending this? She says, listen, I'm doing it on purpose. They may have your body confined, but you cannot allow them to confine your mind. You have to continue to read. You have to continue to grow. You have to continue to write. And so I did that, and it was therapeutic. And that was part of the reason why I wrote the book. I want kids sitting on the south side and west side porches to understand that we do not have to become the reality of other people's perception, meaning that we simply are not throwaways. We are worth saving. The system, by its numbers, not just by what I'm saying, says that 750,000 plus young Black men in prison, there's something not worth saving. So I wrote the book, Redeeming Justice, to remind us all that we are all worth saving.
And eventually, of course, we know that your case was overturned. What was the legal basis for overturning your case?
The legal basis was ineffective assistance of counsel and a piece of evidence that was withheld by the police. You know, my mother couldn't afford an attorney, and that really changed the outcome of my case. I think about how so many mothers on the South Side and on the West Side of Chicago can't afford representation. The public system is broken, especially in the city of Chicago, where we have the largest unified court system. It's not broken because of the public defenders who spend tireless hours. It's broken because of the lack of resources, the lack of knowledge, and it takes advantage and it bullies the communities of color in the city of Chicago.
The young woman who accused you at the time, you never use her name in the book. You refer to her as just the young woman. Tell me why.
Mm-hmm. You know, I put a lot of thought into that. And I also put a lot of thought into the direction that I wanted to go into the book. And what I wanted to take people on in the journey in the book was the effects that it had on the family and the community. My conviction was false. And I had no reason to strike back at my accuser, because at the end of the day, I really believe, after looking back as an adult, that the adults should have been adults. This lady felt embarrassed. It was an encounter that was in on by her roommate, which is what started the entire false allegation. But it was the adults, it was the authorities who decided to put me and my friends in a historical depiction of Black boys, bad gang members. They had to do it despite evidence saying that no crime was committed at all.
Even after your release, what kind of barriers did you still face later on?
There were significant barriers. I mean, I reintegrated back where I came from, outside of Chicago. And you're talking about, for people who are exonerated of crimes, we don't get the normal help that you would think, right? There's not everyone who's gonna get a civil suit. There's some people, they come home and they don't have a family at all to come home to. I was fortunate enough to come home to my mom. My aunts were still alive. So I had a family structure that helped support me. And the number one thing that they told me that was necessary was mental health care. I thank them so much for giving me that guidance and that tutelage, because I don't think that just myself can benefit from it. I think the communities of color in Chicago, who don't suffer just from post-traumatic anything. It's persistent traumatic stress with the violence, with the carnage, and with the criminal justice system picking people up and spitting them right back into the same communities of color.
Jared, the book is called Redeeming Justice. Is the American justice system redeemable?
You know, I called the book Redeeming Justice because of the efforts to go through and implement the changes that I know that are necessary through my journey. But I want to believe that there's something that we can do. We all just collectively have to attack this thing just like we attacked the pandemic. And if you think about it, we all came together. We all stopped politics for a certain amount of time. And we tried to figure out how we could stay safe and be safe in this society. Why can't we do that with the criminal justice system? Is it because 70%, 60% predominantly is African American? That may be the answer. But the answer, the solution, is not continue to lock up people. And I heard earlier there was a war of words, between the district attorney, Kim Fox, and the mayor's office, Lori Lightfoot. I don't want to see a war of words. I want to see a war on poverty. I want to see a war on education and child care in these communities. That's how we redeem justice.
Okay. A lot of work to do. Jared Adams, congrats on the book, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Again, the book is called Redeeming Justice, From Defendant to Defender, My Fight for Equity on Both Sides of a Broken System. Up next, a look at a new initiative to help support underrepresented communities in baseball.
Don't miss one of our stories. Get them all delivered to your desktop or mobile device with a subscription to the WTTW News Daily Briefing. Go to WTTW.com/daily briefing and sign up.
The White Sox are embarking on another playoff run this weekend, and the organization is hoping it has 3 Lucky Charms in its back pocket. The club's Game Changers series of events and discussions began 5 years ago in an effort to support underrepresented communities in baseball. This year, the team switched it up. They asked 3 Chicago artists to create murals inspired by the White Sox that celebrate the color of America's pastime. Here's a look at the mural created by Southside artist Edo, who brought his energetic style to the Sox's most electric player.
You got the Chicago flag on the sleeve. Underneath that, you got like a running base. Down by the elbow, you got like a white sock.
No matter what form it takes, in this case, a 10-foot-high shortstop for the White Sox, there is no mistaking the work of Chicago artist Edo.
The baseball helmet above that, you have popcorn. Above that, you have the number 7. In the bat, you have street pavement, Chicago streets. Both his daughters' names, Paxton and Peyton, above that purple heart right there. You got the baseball mitt with the baseball in it down there.
Edo's wildly vibrant painting of fan favorite Tim Anderson is one of 3 pieces commissioned by the White Sox as part of their Game Changer series. The series throws a spotlight on the contributions of underrepresented communities. The mural was unveiled at Guaranteed Rate Field in July and has been on display around the stadium since then.
Diversity is part of the White Sox history. I mean, I think the organization itself has been crucial and played a critical role in a lot of important social milestones. We've seen so many wonderful players, leaders who have broken the color barrier here. We wanted to create a series, a way to really use our platform to celebrate those voices and creativity.
The Southside artist wasn't sure what the subject of his mural would be until he saw footage of Anderson at an outreach event.
So I saw this video of him talking to the youth, and I was like, boom, there it is. Him being of service to the youth, that's pretty much who I am. That's what we connected, and that's kind of how it came to be. And then seeing Tim Anderson, this color, doing what we do, you know what I'm saying, going after what we love and with the next level, like fire and passion behind it, you know, I think that's something that will rub off on the youth who sees us.
And just like Anderson's exuberant style of play, Edo's bright, boisterous style draws people in.
Whether you're a kid this is your first ball game, or whether you're a 63-year-old man who just loves color and loves art. So I kind of wanted it to meet anybody in between, you know what I'm saying? No matter what age, race, or color, I wanted it to kind of meet them there. Once they start finding everything, and then it becomes like a puzzle. It's a puzzle to me too, and I think that's super cool. I think it becomes like a very, that's when it's fun for me, you know what I mean?
For Chicago Tonight, Black Voices, this is Erica Gunderson.
The White Sox say they plan to use the murals to raise money for local nonprofits supporting the Game Changers mission after the season ends. And you can get a look at the other murals in tonight's Latino Voices and next week on Chicago Tonight. And before we leave you tonight, we've reached a milestone here at Chicago Tonight Black Voices. This is our 50th show since our debut last fall. Here's a look back at some of our favorite moments.
Because no one can tell your story better than you can.
Footwork is not just a choreograph-based dance, it's also an improvisational dance.
We also should let people know what the city is and what the city has been and what we can become.
It is yours.
The outdoors are for everyone. That's what we always say.
And it's doing those things that make you happy.
What impact do you hope this bill will have on Black children especially?
I want Black youth to understand that their hair is beautiful.
And I held that. And that did something to me. It unlocked some peace.
I think about the grief of losing Miles directly.
Athletes have driven a national, now actually global dialogue.
Mothers reach out and send me videos of their daughters reading the poems. It makes me well up.
This was a very brave woman who was way ahead of her time.
Now you have a, tangible question that you can find an answer to.
And so you had this tension between the two.
Put a little bit more love into it, you might like it and how it grew.
It may work here in Evanston, and we should call it a housing program, but it's not true reparations.
Our guilty verdict's only possible in the most egregious, videotaped, highly documented, highly publicized cases.
We really pride ourselves in fighting the best for the community.
Thinking outside of the box while we're in the box.
That is not America. We do not want to unite with that. I think that's the unity that Joe Biden should be striving for.
Fair housing is not just a city issue.
And where we are is where we've always been, and that is that America needs to grow up, finally.
I would tell you we've had better quality because of our commitment to diversity within the firm.
And yes, we can, yes, we will, and yes, we must.
And we want to thank you as well, the viewer, for being a part of Chicago Tonight, Black Voices. And that's our show for this weekend. Be sure to check out our website, WTTW.com/news, for the very latest from WTTW News, including details on the proposed $8 billion Cook County budget. And if you're watching us on Saturday night, know that you can also catch Black Voices and Latino Voices on Sundays beginning at 10 p.m. And join me and Paris Schutz next week at 7 on Chicago Tonight. Now, for all of us here at Chicago Tonight, Black Voices, I'm Brandis Friedman. Thank you for sharing part of your weekend with us. Stay healthy and safe, and have a good night.
Closed captioning is made possible by Robert A. Clifford and Clifford Law Offices, a Chicago personal injury and wrongful death firm that's proud to serve its community through pro bono legal services.